One thing a lot of us guys do, and I'll just cop to this for myself, there are a lot of guys that just cut off any of their royal and warrior stuff and just don't show it. They take refuge in the magician sort of lover sector of the psyche.
Have you ever found yourself intellectualizing your way out of confrontation? Do you retreat into logic, reason, or charm when faced with emotional tension? Have you ever had someone accuse you of not being present during conflict? Are you the peacekeeper, the mediator, the one who understands both sides but rarely takes a definitive stand? The words you just heard come from Dr. Robert Moore, one of the most profound psychological thinkers on masculine development. And today, we're diving deep into a pattern that affects millions of men: the unconscious abandonment of our king and warrior energies in favor of the magician and lover archetypes. This isn't just psychology. This is about reclaiming parts of yourself that may have been dormant for decades. Parts that, when absent, leave you feeling incomplete, ineffective, and somehow not fully alive. What if I told you that your avoidance of conflict isn't wisdom, but a wound? What if your rational, reasonable approach to emotional confrontation isn't maturity, but a sophisticated defense mechanism? What if your ability to stay cool in heated moments isn't strength, but a learned response to early trauma? Today, we're exploring the shadow side of peacekeeping. How many men unconsciously amputate vital parts of themselves in order to survive, and how this self-betrayal impacts every relationship in your life. In Dr. Moore's groundbreaking work mapping the male psyche, he identified 4 primary archetypal energies present in all men: the king, the energy of order, blessing, and creative authority; the warrior, the energy of disciplined action, protection, and boundary setting; the magician, the energy of awareness, knowledge, and technical skill; the lover, the energy of connection, passion, and sensuality. While all 4 energies are essential parts of integrated masculinity, many men have learned to over-identify with just 2, the magician and the lover, while abandoning or suppressing the other 2.
Instead of ever developing the ability to be in a confrontation with another person, not just women, but to be in that confrontation without being homicidal, and being in that confrontation without really making oneself suicidal by not protecting oneself. There are a lot of guys who cut the whole active aspects of the male self off in order to survive.
This psychological amputation happens for understandable reasons. Perhaps you grew up with a father whose king or warrior energy was destructive, authoritarian rather than authoritative, violent rather than protective. Perhaps you were punished for asserting boundaries or standing your ground. Perhaps you learned that emotional safety came through intellectual understanding or through charm and connection, the domains of the magician and lover. So you developed what worked. You became the reasonable one, the one who could explain anything, the one who could diffuse tension with humor or warmth, the one who could see all perspectives and hold contradictions. All valuable skills, but incomplete when they come at the expense of your capacity for healthy confrontation and boundary setting.
And what they will do is what I did for many years, is I would just sort of be like the Wizard of Oz, and I would just disappear into that magician. Nothing would enrage a woman more than she's trying to confront the man, trying to engage him, and he sort of, suddenly she notices, this thing sitting here with me is not really him. This is an android. That guy put an android in here to deal with me. I'm not kidding you.
This disappearing act is the hallmark of men who have abandoned their king and warrior energies. On the surface, they appear present. They're physically there, responding, often with impressive intellectual capacity or emotional understanding. But something essential is missing. Their partners feel it, their children feel it, their colleagues feel it. It's as if the man has sent a sophisticated android to handle the confrontation while his true self remains safely hidden behind the curtain. He's there, but not there. Speaking, but not revealing. Responding, but not engaging. This psychological absence has profound consequences. It creates what psychologists call crazy-making situations for partners who sense they're interacting with a facade rather than a full human being. Moore describes how this leads to escalation.
And often they could not articulate that, what that I just said, but they think this is not a real person. And so then they'll start to escalate their attacks to see if this thing can sustain some punishment or whether they will crack and the real guy will step out.
Consider the devastating implications of this dynamic. When you withhold your full presence, particularly your capacity for healthy confrontation and boundary setting, you create a void that others will instinctively try to fill by escalating. They'll push harder, become more aggressive, desperately trying to reach the real you behind the intellectual or emotional shield. This escalation cycle destroys relationships. Your partner feels increasingly frustrated and unheard, while you feel increasingly attacked and misunderstood. Neither of you recognizes the root cause, your unconscious abandonment of essential aspects of your masculine energy.
So a lot of us become opaque, and we are not visible. When I did the Mankind Project weekend, and I was asked to choose a name, an animal name, I chose President Lion, because in so much of my life I have been opaque and not present, not accessible, behind my magician capacities. Oh, you have a problem? I don't understand.
Moore's confession is powerful. Despite being one of the foremost experts on masculine psychology, he too struggled with this pattern of opacity, of hiding behind his considerable intellectual gifts rather than being fully present with his whole self.
Yeah, and we call that, in psychoanalysis, when we handle things that way, we call it the false self system.
The false self system is a psychological defense structure that develops when we learn to hide our authentic reactions and present only what feels safe or acceptable. For many men, the false self becomes so habitual that we no longer recognize we're operating from it. We believe we are being authentic when we respond with intellectual analysis or emotional attunement, not realizing these are just the parts of ourselves we've deemed safe to show. Let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with intellectual capacity or emotional intelligence. These are vital aspects of mature masculinity. The problem arises when these capacities are deployed as sophisticated defenses against full engagement, particularly around conflict. The price of this pattern is steep. 1. Relationship deterioration. Partners sense your absence and either escalate to reach you or eventually give up trying. Either way, intimacy suffers. 2. Personal stagnation. Without healthy confrontation skills, you avoid necessary conflicts and miss opportunities for growth. 3. Diminished authority. Without access to king energy, your capacity to create order and offer blessing is compromised. 4th, ineffective protection. Without access to warrior energy, your ability to defend boundaries and protect what matters is weakened. 5. Spiritual numbness. The divided self creates an inner split that prevents full presence in your own life. 6. Unconscious rage. Suppressed warrior energy doesn't disappear. It goes underground, emerging in passive-aggressive behavior or explosive outbursts. Most critically, when you abandon your king and warrior energies, you lose access to what Moore called the masculine heart, that part of yourself capable of fierce love, noble purpose, and courageous action. The way forward isn't to reject your magician and lover energies. These are essential parts of your masculine wholeness. Rather, it's to reclaim and integrate your king and warrior energies alongside them. This integration begins with awareness. Notice when you retreat into intellectual analysis or charm during conflict. Observe without judgment how you disappear when confrontation arises. Pay attention to the subtle signs of your absence, the glazed look, the abstract language, the sudden shift to helper mode. Next comes acceptance. Understand that this pattern developed for reasons that made sense at the time. It was an adaptive strategy that helped you survive. Honor the intelligence of that younger self who found this path to safety. But now, as an adult man, you have choices your younger self didn't have. You can develop new capacities. You can learn to stay present during confrontation without either attacking or retreating. Here are 5 practical steps toward reclaiming your full masculine energy. 1. Physical embodiment. The king and warrior energies are deeply connected to physical presence. Regular practices that ground you in your body, martial arts, strength training, hiking in nature, help reconnect you to these energies. 2. Boundary practice. Begin noticing where you need boundaries and practice expressing them clearly and calmly. Start with small, low-stakes situations to build confidence. 3. Emotional literacy. Learn to identify and name your emotions, particularly anger, which is often the first casualty of the false self-system. Anger, properly understood, is boundary information. It tells you where your limits are being crossed. 4. Deliberate discomfort. Systematically expose yourself to manageable doses of conflict. Express disagreement. State unpopular opinions. Allow tension to exist without immediately resolving it. Notice what happens in your body when you do. 5. Archetypal imagination. Work with the king and warrior archetypes through visualization, ritual, art, or prayer. Imagine embodying these energies. What would it feel like to access your inner king's capacity for order and blessing? What would it feel like to access your inner warrior's capacity for disciplined action and protection? The goal isn't to become aggressive or domineering. Those are shadow expressions of king and warrior energy. The goal is integration, to become a man who can access all 4 archetypal energies as needed, who can be both intellectually nimble and firmly grounded, both emotionally accessible and clearly boundaried. Dr. Moore's chosen name during his men's work weekend is profoundly revealing. Present Lion. The lion represents the king and warrior energies, the capacity for both noble authority and fierce protection. Present indicates Moore's recognition that his challenge was to remain fully present rather than hiding behind his considerable intellectual gifts. What would it mean for you to become a present lion in your own life? What would change if you could bring your full masculine energy, king, warrior, magician, and lover, to every situation? How would your relationships transform if you could remain present during conflict rather than disappearing into abstraction or charm? The journey toward masculine integration isn't easy. It requires confronting old wounds, challenging habitual patterns, and developing new capacities. But the rewards are immense: deeper relationships, greater effectiveness, and an unshakable sense of wholeness. As Dr. Moore often emphasized, mature masculinity isn't about domination or control. It's about power in service of something greater than oneself. When you reclaim your king and warrior energies and integrate them with your magician and lover energies, you become capable of this sacred power: the power to create order from chaos, to protect what matters, to perceive truth, and to connect deeply with others.
It is possible to be so conflict averse that you don't put anything out there of your true self that might lead somebody to want to bump up against you.
These words from Moore capture the essence of the challenge. The fear of conflict leads to a withholding of your true self. And this withholding prevents the very connections you most deeply desire. True intimacy, whether with partners, friends, children, or colleagues, requires the willingness to bump up against each other, to engage in the creative friction that comes when 2 authentic beings meet. This engagement isn't possible when you're hiding behind intellectual analysis or emotional charm. Today, I invite you to consider where you might be cutting off your king and warrior energies. Where are you disappearing into the magician or lover to avoid necessary confrontation? Where are you sending an android to handle your relationships while your true self remains safely hidden? This isn't about blame or shame. It's about awareness and choice. It's about reclaiming parts of yourself that may have been dormant for decades. It's about becoming whole. The journey toward masculine integration is both personal and archetypal. It's your unique path, but it follows patterns as old as humanity itself. Throughout history, cultures worldwide created deliberate initiation practices to help men develop all four archetypal energies. While those formal initiations have largely disappeared in modern society, the need for them remains. Today, you can create your own initiation path. You can consciously develop the parts of yourself that were unconsciously abandoned. You can learn to stand in the fullness of your masculine energy, not as a dominating force, but as a creative, protective, aware, and connected presence. The world needs men who can access all dimensions of their masculine energy, men who can create order from chaos, men who can protect what matters without becoming destructive, men who can perceive truth beyond appearances, men who can connect deeply without losing themselves. The world needs present lions, men who show up fully, who engage authentically, who bring their whole selves to every situation. Are you ready to reclaim the full spectrum of your masculine energy? Are you ready to integrate the king, warrior, magician, and lover within you? Are you ready to step out from behind the curtain and be fully present even when, especially when, conflict arises? If so, I invite you to take one conscious step toward integration today. Notice where you tend to disappear. Practice staying present in one small instance of conflict. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort without either attacking or retreating. And as a symbol of your commitment to this path of integration, I invite you to write "Psycho-Awakening" in the comments below. This simple act becomes a declaration of intent, a statement that you're ready to awaken to your full masculine potential, to reclaim the parts of yourself that have been dormant, to become the present lion in your own life. Your journey toward wholeness begins with awareness. It continues with courage, and it leads to a life of authentic power, power in service of something greater than yourself, the power to create, to protect, to perceive, and to connect, the power to be fully, authentically, powerfully you.